Welcome to Creative. This week I'll be interviewing Graham Semark of Cyclone Music Productions. I've known Graham for a number of years. He was playing in bands, supporting one another. And then Graham had a really good studio called Red Studios that he used to record in. So, on with the interview. Hi Graham, how are you?
Hi Vic, I'm good. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you very much. Still there. It's always a good sign.
You're looking well, I have to say.
Same for you.
Well,
so normally when I start this off, I say to people, "What is it you do?"
what is it that I do? What is it that I do now from where I started and how it changed on the way?
Or just tell me what. Yeah, just if somebody said, "What do you do, Graham?" What would you say?
I make, I suppose, the best description of my business, my day-to-day business, is I make vinyl records and CDs and the occasional DVD now for people. It's effectively, my company is a broker for a manufacturing plant that press vinyl records and make CDs. The main line of business is audio, music, but being CDs being a data medium, then yeah, when I first set it all up, it was based around CD and DVD, and the occasional Blu-ray as that technology developed along the way. But Of course nowadays, the busiest part at the moment, or seems to be the biggest part as far as marketplace growth is concerned, is vinyl pressing. Vinyl records have become really popular.
It's amazing. It's amazing to see it come around again like that.
Yeah. I mean, one of the mistakes, I suppose, if you can call it a mistake, that I made when I first set up Cyclone, which is the manufacturing company for music product carriers, CDs, was that I didn't really build vinyl into the equation when I first set the production company up. I mean, at the time I started, which was when the production company started up, which was really the sort of like mid 90s, mid to late 90s, vinyl was in recession, and CD and DVD was the way. I mean, everybody wanted to make a CD. Vinyl was a thing of the past, and so I didn't really bother getting that facility set up, which I should have done in retrospect, going back, then, but I didn't. And I noticed the swing during the last 3 or 4 years, which was where vinyl was becoming more and more popular. Actually, establishing yourself in that marketplace from pretty much the ground up at that time was a lot more difficult. But things now are very good. We've got some really good supplier accounts in place and some good relationship with plants in Europe and a couple in the UK. It's mainly Europe at the moment, though. Most of my suppliers are in Europe, so we can get onto the Brexit thing whenever you're ready. But yeah, I mean that's it. And yeah, I mean most of my workload this week will be dealing with vinyl orders.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because if we go right back to the beginning, when you started off, because we're obviously gonna look at how weird this stuff is that vinyl's back again. Until, of course, if you step back in a lot of situations, you realise that things never really go away. A bit like acoustic guitars, really. If you see what I mean. We'll talk about
music.
That.
It all goes round, fashions and clothing, and what's a current favourite. It was probably a current favourite 50 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take you back to the beginning. How did you get involved in music?
Well, my first my first mission really was to become a pop star, like I
Right, mate.
suppose every teenager. Yeah, but I mean, I think the difference between myself and yourself that became apparent to me fairly early on was some people can play and some people, you know, are not really destined for that. And I don't really think it became sort of fairly obvious to me. Well, I felt at a fairly early stage of my career that being a musician, you know, as the main selling point of my whatever, wasn't me. I don't think I really ever had the talent to become a good enough musician to be able to be, you know, a musician as a living. It was always, to me, it was a struggle to learn and get better as a player. Whereas, you know, it's more natural for yourself. You've developed as a musician, and some people can and some people can't. It's just one of them things. I think it's something you've got or you haven't. And I don't think it was really ever, or if it is, you may disagree with me, if it is in everybody, I didn't find the way to develop it. I sort of decided, you know, my stream ran a different way and I got more taken and became more interested in music production and working as an engineer and a producer and helping musicians, you know, sort of develop what they do into getting it recorded and making it available to the rest of the world, which is why I didn't last that long really in the live, you know, performance, you know, stage of my career, if we can call it that. And I set up a recording studio, as you know, and that really took over from being a player.
Let's talk a little bit about that because the band you were in were really good, actually, weren't they?
Yeah, well,
they were.
Yeah, they probably were. They were pretty good. Yeah, they were pretty good, and yeah, there was a you know, a little bit of recognition, a little bit of success, and yeah, and there was a few sort of names out there that recognised it as being something that could go somewhere. But I don't know. I felt I was surrounded by people who were better than me, to be honest. You know, and it was. I always felt like I was a bit of a weak link.
Yeah, but I just want to sort of question you on this because I often interview people who sort of say, "Well, I wasn't very good at that," and you think, actually, you were actually pretty good. I interviewed somebody a little while ago who was a sort of who is a top classical guitar player. I mean, he's an amazing musician.
Yeah.
And I said to him, how did you suddenly get so connected? Because he went from playing electric guitar into being interested in classical, and then suddenly, then the classical guitar took over. Yeah. And then I said, so when was the real transition point? And he sort of went, well, I started doing duos with John Mills. No, not John Mills the actor, but John Mills the classical guitar player, who was, along with people like Julian Bream and John Williams, was like one of the top people in this country. And it's like, well, how do you go from like not knowing anyone to suddenly working with like one of the top players, and I said, well, did you have, and he was doing all these amazing concerts all over the place. So I said, did you have a good agent? He went, no. He said, I don't sort of do that. And he says, I'm incredibly lazy, right? This is what he said. Right. Yeah. But the point was, this guy has produced like over 25 recordings, right, with other, on his own with other people. He's produced about over 30 odd books, right, music books on classical guitar. Yeah. And you go like, that doesn't sound to me like anybody who's lazy, right? And this is what I mean. People often, in their own mind, think that I'm not as good as I perceive myself that I should be. I think that's what happens.
Yeah, it could well be. And I mean, there are times, even now that I just, and not necessarily anything to do with like playing music, but it's like I've not got as much done today as I should have.
Yes.
And it's that, I think it's that constant thing of wanting to be one step in front of where you
Yeah.
can be realistically.
Yes.
It's like where you push yourself, and push yourself. I mean, for me, I just went down that road. You thought, you know, I'm really enjoying this, and the pressure of being live in front, having to get it right in front of people, an audience, and also the difficulty, because it is a really difficult business to sort of break through in and get on in.
Yeah.
And I think once we got to the point whereby the deal, because we're very close to a deal with A&M Records back in the day, when that finally didn't happen, I sort of, it was, you know, that feeling of disappointment and letdown, and the fact that the recording studio thing, I was really in demand back in that day to be a producer with people. You know, I spent so many hours in a recording studio working with other people to you know, on their products, rather than being out gigging with my own band. And I just allowed that to take over, and the band that I played in split up, and I didn't really look for any other work in that vein, because I was so busy as an engineer and a producer in the recording studio, and I developed that side of things, and I've been really lucky. I've worked with some amazing musicians, some really good acts, and got my name on a lot of product that's out there, and yeah, it's been an amazing journey.
Yeah. So let's just go back. So that was you know, so you were playing, because this is obviously where we met. Back in the day. But you made some interesting contacts at that point anyway, because that sort of Medway type scene.
Yeah.
What we're talking about, 1980s, aren't we?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, I gave up my day job, so to speak, when I was playing in 1986. So yeah, it was right smack in the middle of the 80s.
Yeah. And the actual that Medway's gigging scene was really good. There was some.
Yeah, it was. It was great. And there was
good.
Yeah, there was a magical venue.
Good audiences that you could, you know, that were keen to sort of hear whatever's happening. Lots of people playing their own material.
Yeah, there was a lot of originality as well.
There was. Yeah.
And that was one of the aspects probably the band that I played in did have. I mean, you had the main writing pair in the group, which was Chris Broderick and Glenn Barnes.
Yeah.
They were clever people, and the songwriting was strong.
Yeah, it was.
So that combined with you know, hopefully from my point of view, a slightly different approach, you know, with doing the, you know, the part that I did, and Dave the drummer, the way we worked as a unit was a little bit different, I suppose. It was a little bit, yeah. And that was the aim. You know, the aim was to try and be original, to try and be different. You know, and hence the you know, the liking. Can't find the word I'm looking for. The influence of bands like Magazine back in the day, and a band that not many people have heard of called Punishment of Luxury, which were an incredible, you know, display of uniqueness, really, in modern music.
Yeah.
We would listen to all that kind of stuff and try to be a bit out on a limb, I suppose, a bit different. And that was. It
was interesting because there was a lot of different bands in that.
Yeah.
Weren't there? I mean, was it the Killer Rabbits? Milkshakes, Bravura, a lot of, a lot of interesting, different, diverse bands. Even if they were playing sort of reggae, it wasn't just, you know, trying to be Bob Marley. There was a lot of sort of research and stuff going into, like you're saying, you were listening to bands that were perhaps a little bit more marginal.
Yeah, I mean, influences from, you know, when you mention reggae, I mean, the way the Clash, you combine reggae with a, you know, sort of a new wave approach, really.
Well,
I mean,
what we were doing.
Fantastic, but I mean, they were iconic, you know, and that kind of originality was something that really sparked inspiration in me. I just thought, yeah, this is good, this is new, it's really, it's something, it's a real fresh face.
And to be honest, I don't see a lot of that now.
No. It was a very quite an explosive period for originality, and no, it does seem a little bit. I don't know what's the polite way of putting it. A bit
Don't be
samey.
polite.
A bit. There's not much colour around at the
No,
moment.
no. It's all a bit. It's in a way, without going down this rabbit hole too far. Technology is a great tool, but technology can end up dictating exactly what you end up with, and I think that's where a lot of pop music and rock music's ended up. That the technology means that it's all beginning to sound a bit bland, and it's that sort of getting that mix between the performance and the actual sound quality of a recording.
Having said that, I mean, one of the advantages with doing what I do now is obviously I get to work with a lot of people who are trying to break through, and I have seen recently I should say, some quite interesting stuff. There's a local based label that we do a lot of work for, which is run by a guy called Sean Hendry, and he's got an act that we're working on, a coloured vinyl. I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble for advertising anything here, but
no, keep going.
He's got an act called The Happy Couple signed to his label, and we're working on a coloured vinyl project at the moment that will be released, I believe, in September. And that's real. There's a lot of originality in the whole approach. The compositions, the way it's recorded, it's very refreshing.
Yeah.
It's all music. There's no vocal, but the name of the record is called Broadland Exotica, and they're trying to conjure up a picture of the sound of the Norfolk Broads, in fact. Right. And it's really it's interesting stuff. It really is. It's sort of like a merge between classical music and a rock. I wouldn't say pop, but it's like merging the two together. Was really interesting. It's a really interesting soundscape. It's very relaxing and very, very open and airy sounding record. It's very good.
It's good. So let's go back to the studio, because when the studio started out, tell me about the Red Studios. Tell me.
Yeah, it was a real adventure. I mean, the plan from the word go was myself and the drummer from the band that we played in decided we would set up our own record label and recording studio and production company and blah blah blah. It was that dream of your own Abbey Road, I suppose, when it was first born. The seed was really nothing more than what started out as a Porter studio in a garden shed.
Yeah,
that's we didn't have a huge amount of money, and we didn't have a big posh property to convert into a studio. So we put a Porter studio in a garden shed, effectively, and turn the insides of the shed into effectively a 2-room operation, whereby you had effectively a control room and a live room, and that was it. It went into the local paper as the new recording studio. It was affordable for local, and because the music scene, as you rightly point out, was busy and very vibrant at the time we set this facility up, it became busy to the point of, it was incredible. I mean, I think the first recording session we ever did was with a local group. I don't know if you've ever heard of them or you remember them, called the Strukers.
Yes.
From Maidstone back in the mid '80s, and they're still together, in fact, with a different name now. I think they're called Tenota 80. They sell quite a lot of records in Japan, but they were called the Strukers back then, and they were our first customers. And of course, then we went on to work with local bands like The Claim, who were a really good act, and again, very strong songwriters. And it was just and yeah, I mean, within 12 months or there, I think it was less than 12 months. Within a year of opening it as an experiment to see if we could make it work as a business, I'd gone full time. I had a secure job working for the Ports Authority back in the day. And it was a big risk to give that up and become a professional engineer producer, but that's what I did. And it kept me busy right through to what I do now. And I've never worked for anyone else since. It's been, that was the start of a career that's still going.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about some of the recordings that you did, because I'm particularly interested in. I've just been sort of conversing with Billy Childish about doing an interview with Bill.
Yeah.
And I know you did a lot of stuff with Bill.
Yeah.
And interestingly, it's sort of, well, you tell the story, because
working with Billy.
He's got an interesting way of working, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, Billy really is. He knows what he wants and how he wants to do it. He's incredibly creative and very strident in the way he needs to control how things are. And what I could see, what I learned straight away, which was very different about Billy compared to a lot of other musicians of the time, who would come in with lots of expensive equipment and be interested in, the technical capabilities of their kit, and and all these elements about the technical side of recording and sound, and which had got nothing to do with the performance aspect of what they were convey to the end listener, which was where Billy was. That's what he's all about. It wasn't about going into the studio to spend hours going over a solo to get it to be technically perfect, or it was about capturing a performance as quickly and as spirited as possible, that conveyed the lyrical message of what was in his heart. That's the best way I can describe it. And it was amazing working with him. It was really eye-opening and an amazing experience. And yeah, we would go in, and we would start working on a Friday, late on a Friday afternoon, and by the end of Sunday we'd have recorded a 16-track album, and it was complete and done and ready to go to the pressing plant for product, which was very, very fast, to say the least. But there was always a tremendous amount of excitement and spirit in the sound of the way he worked. It's that difference between, because I've worked with all sorts of people and all sorts of approaches, and yeah, you can go in the studio with someone who wants to record something in a way that they want it to be perfect in their eye, technically or whatever. And my view was, a typical example would be, you go in and you're track laying. It's not live. The drummer would record his bit, and then the bass player puts his bit on top, whatever. And the whole thing does sound very separated and unglued at the end of it. I mean, from a technical point of view, the actual sound is it clever? Is that a good word to use? Because it's all separate, and you can hear it all separated.
I think clever is a good word, actually. I think it's a good word for that.
Yeah, clinical and whatever. But I always used to find that gave quite a very stiff, boring, uninspiring end result to the way the spirit was lost.
Yes.
And my way of working in the recording studio, which did combine quite nicely with the way Billy's approach, was that I would get the band to go in there and play as live as possible.
Yes.
Now we didn't worry too much about separation. You know, for me, a lot of the great recordings in the 60s and 70s were made with 1 or 2 microphones in a room. All you need is a good sounding room, good sounding musical instruments, people who knew how to play them properly, and somewhere who could walk around the room until you was in a sweet spot where the sound was good, and that's where you put your microphone, and then press record and play, and that was it. And that was very much, you know, very similar to the way that Billy liked to work. I mean, I used to make as much effort as possible to keep the sound as separated, each instrument separated as much as we could, to be able to control the individual levels so that we could make mix decisions afterwards rather than it all be committed and that was that. But I would not worry about, you know, if you can hear a little bit of another instrument on who cares? You know, it doesn't matter as long as you can control it enough at the end to maybe nudge something up or down a little bit just to get it how you want it to sound through a pair of speakers in someone's living room while they're listening to it. That's all that matters. The most important thing by a million miles is to capture the spirit of the performance. And that was my policy from the word go, and that's how I used to work, and I think that's why, you know, we were successful with the studio, because bands were done.
Saying that, because this is partly what I was getting at when I was saying about the technology can dominate how something turns out. Because of that, you know, we lose sight of what the music's about, if you see what I mean.
Yeah,
absolutely. Why are we playing? Why are we playing music? I mean, nobody starts off with a logical reason for wanting to play a musical instrument, because it's not logical. You know, you know, the whole idea, like you said at the beginning, everybody wants to be a pop star. I mean, if you sat down and looked at the statistical evidence of whether you were going to make it or not, you wouldn't even start, right?
Well, no, and going back to that comment, you know, I realised as I got a bit older, can we?
Yeah. I'll just do that. Okay, so, sorry, carry on, Graham, as you were saying.
No problem. Where was I?
Yeah, you were still sitting in the studio. No. We were saying about the thing about recording and getting the feeling of the music. And
yeah.
Unfortunately, sure. You know, we sometimes lose sight of why we were playing a musical instrument in the first place. You know, it's all about the passion and the desire about wanting to do something. And music should be the same. Your performances should be the same. It's like when you go and see a band, you know, when somebody covers a song by somebody else, why do you want to play it the same? Because they could sit and listen to it in the car, you know, or through their phone or whatever it is, right? So if you're going to do a song, you know, the essence of a song is not, it's in the spirit of the song, you know. So if you play the song in a different way, it makes it much more interesting to do. And of course, great bands like, you know, Led Zeppelin's a good example of this. I mean, they probably never played a song the same way twice. You know, you went and saw Led Zeppelin and they didn't even know what they were going to do when they stepped out on the stage.
No, I don't remember.
You know what I mean? But it's...
Yeah, I do. It's all about interpretation of the moment, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's also about living, sort of putting yourself on the edge, so it's a little bit dangerous. And I had a conversation with John Etheridge, and you know, John Etheridge played with Soft Machine, and he was Stephen Grappelli's guitarist.
Sure.
Amazing player. And John was, as a teenager, he was friends with Jimi Hendrix, and he used to go and see Hendrix. He used to go and see Hendrix playing, and he said it was one of my great moments when Hendrix actually Jimmy said to him, "You're a really good player, John." And that was like, you know, that was his sort of moment of like, oh my God, that's just wonderful, you know, this real sort of validation. But he said if you went and saw Hendrix play, he said something would always go wrong because he was literally on the edge of everything. You know, what the amp could do, what the guitar could do, what he could do. You know, and he said, but within that, you'd get half an hour, 40 minutes of just total brilliance.
Yeah.
And then, you know, he'd break a string or
yeah,
his amp would blow up or something. You know what I mean? But it was always that sort of thing that he was constantly pushing the boundaries.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, I would have, you know, the people like Hendrix that I would have loved to have been able to see perform. It's almost like, you know, watching Van Gogh paint a picture, you know, to be able to witness something like that, where it is a, you know, it's almost like an explosion of it's, yeah, I mean, but I didn't get that opportunity.
No. And obviously Van Gogh didn't play by ear because he
didn't. No.
Well, he probably could have done. He could have used it as a plectrum. But
your career is clearly diversifying, Vic.
Yeah. So anyway, so we've got this the studio thing, and obviously that was such a great place. Sort of, and you know, it was really good fun to record there. So obviously you saw things, and I remember actually when you were talking about focusing more on the production side of things, and I mean even then, even back in the day of the studio, you had a production line of cassettes. You had lots of cassette replication and stuff, so you were already on that line.
Yeah. I mean, it was clearly I'd set the recording studio up, and you know, we were making commercial quality recordings in there fairly quickly, and it became apparent not long into it that people, you know, oh, where can we get some? Of course, in that day, it was where can we have some cassettes run off, or where can we get our records pressed? And that's when I thought, well, you know, we need to have a bolt on here and offer a secondary service. And the first thing was, we had our own cassette duplication facility down there. And it was a real-time facility, so we effectively had loads of cassette decks all linked together with a distribution amplifier, and we would make cassette copies for people. And then obviously we progressed into the CD side of things. And that required another studio as well, because, you know, which we still have, the post-production facility, we still have here, because once you finished in a recording studio, you then go into post-production and you make your pre-masters prior to a CD replication or duplication, or cutting vinyl lacquers for vinyl pressing. And the pre-production facility was an integral requirement after the recording studio before you went on to manufacturing products. And I mean, there came a point which was around the mid-90s. The studio was my living for around 10 years, I guess. And then, you know, the advent of home recording was becoming more and more popular. You could, you know, you could buy a computer and do a lot of the stuff that we were doing in our recording studio at home. So business tailed off a little bit. There was still plenty of work to be had. But I decided I'd also got to a point whereby I'd started to lose the spirit myself a little bit. I found myself when I first, you know, was working as a producer in the studio, I would be in there with the musicians, helping them sort things out, you know, really being in amongst it and really wanting to be there. But after a certain period of time, you know, I suppose it just wore me down, really. I don't know what happened, but it was one of them things whereby I suddenly found myself behind the glass in the control room, looking through. Someone was in there, and I'm thinking, but you're not really a great player. Should you really be here? And I'm thinking, it's time to stop.
You had a very descriptive term.
Well, it's, you can't, everybody's got a right to do what they want to do if they want to go in a recording studio. But, if the guy behind who's working the controls isn't able to, lock with them, so to speak, and do the job, then it's time to move on. It's time to choose, you've been doing the job long enough. And that's where I found that I was feeling. And so I thought, it's time to move on, Graham. It's time to move on. So I concentrated on, for various reasons, the post-production side of things, to people having stuff mastered, to go into, to have CDs made and vinyl records pressed. The standard was generally a bit higher because people who were going to throw that kind of money at it was generally, there was a chance we were going to sell product. And, the marketplace, I was moving up a little bit in the, I think, marketplace. So I set up the satellite operation there and kept the recording studio going because I had a few other recording engineers who were still doing the work for me that I couldn't do anymore because I was setting up Cyclone as a production company and a mastering facility. And that became busy with working for the American label that we were introduced to by one of the studio clients back in the day called the Dentists. Them. And that became busy. We were manufacturing product for release all over Europe and the UK and the States for Rainbow Quartz label and other labels that started to use us as a manufacturer. And I just had no time left for the recording studio. And at the same time as that happening, the bookings were becoming less and less and less. People were doing more home recording. And I just got to a point in the late 90s where I thought, it's time to shut the studio down. That was then and this is now. So Red Studio closed. It was a sad day and there's a huge amount of history there. But yeah, I mean, things come to an end. And that was the decision in, I think, 1998, 99, around that time. And I've been here at the Cyclone office ever since. So that really is about
that's
it. Yeah.
So how do you see things going now? I know that's a bit difficult because we said about things being very cyclic anyway, and suitably, vinyl records are circular, and they've come back again, literally.
Well, they're all circular. Actually, we can make excellent. We can make ones.
I was trying to push the metaphor.
Very shape.
I know. But we were saying about acoustic guitars because, again, the guitar world has gone through this sort of thing where when we started off, unless you did something with an acoustic guitar, nobody really took much interest, particularly because it became more and more niche. Obviously a big thing in the 60s and whatever. But now the acoustic guitar is massive on its, lots of really big names are associated as acoustic players, not electric players. So I think it's quite interesting how things go like this. You can't write things off, can you, at all? They come back.
Oh yeah. I mean, again, you mentioned cassettes. We're actually getting inquiries about cassette duplication again now.
It's amazing, isn't it?
We are, and there are some acts out there on major labels that are releasing product on cassette. Cassettes are coming back.
Yeah.
It is interesting.
It is fascinating. It's
so
fascinating.
I don't think so. The CD market has been shrinking. And I think there's something a bit more tangible about vinyl and a cassette. The tactile feel of it and the mechanism. It's quite a funky little thing, a cassette. There's bits that move and stuff. And a record being big and and the physical size of it,
and also the fact that you've got a decent sleeve with a record.
Yeah, there's more room for artwork. I think really it's like a CD is a little bit throwaway. That they are a little bit. They're very connected to downloading and streaming, and they are a little bit throwaway. But they are still the most inexpensive way to put audio on a sound carrier. that you can carry around with you and plug in somewhere.
Mm.
They're the most inexpensive way to do it. I mean, yeah, you can use USB sticks or cassettes or vinyl records, but a CD is still is the most inexpensive way of doing it. I don't think they'll ever disappear completely.
No.
But
I think probably that. I think it's quite possible that they might change the way that they're perceived. I mean, for me, they're a brilliant business card. Because it's it's like a bit of a gift. If you give somebody a CD as a business card, there's your information on it, and you can stick other things in the sleeve or whatever. It's a really good way of sort of, what do you call it, reciprocity thing. It's that you're giving something out to people. And I learned a lesson very early on. Actually, we did a recording back in the days of Bravura, which we recorded down in Sheerness. I think it was before you had the studio. It was Woody Records.
Woolly Records.
Yeah.
I was always amused by the choice of name. Just probably because the Isle of Sheppey and
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things you could have called it if it came from the Isle of Sheppey, and that wouldn't have done anyone either. But anyway, but what happened was that it was one of these sort of fluky things that we gave that, or they sent off a load of records, singles, and we started getting airplay all over the place. Like, we didn't even know it was happening, and then it was picked up by the local BBC, and then it was Mike Brill came out and recorded us, and we were paid by the BBC to do a concert, right?
Yeah.
And they paid us. It was almost to the pound what the recording cost. Just complete fluke.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. And it was like, we could have given all of these away. We could have given the whole lot away and we would have got our money back. And that was such a lesson to me, right back then, that you could do that. It was weird, because we always think, oh, you've got to sell that at this unit price, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes that's not the way to think. Sometimes you have to think outside the box, and get a little bit of that creative, like we were talking about the bands back when we were playing, that they were that creative, that we were always thinking outside the box. And sometimes you have to go back to that mentality that, you don't have to do that, we were making our own. That was another thing. We were making our own stage clothes.
Really?
We were. I don't know if you were, but we were.
Well, we had this strange. It was a singer's idea, but we had this 40s suits approach. He wanted us to appear like 1940s gangsters, I think. But it was, as you remember, Wildlife didn't wear any shoes. We would we'd be bare feet with wearing a 1940s suit. And
that's right.
I had this strange desire to wear a red carnation as well for some reason. I don't know why, but I did. Not?
I mean,
I still quite like them now.
We made our own stuff. We made our own clothes, and which was interesting because it ended up that we had some sort of look because we made our own clothes.
Yeah, well, of course, yeah.
And in fact, we even found somewhere in Dartford that would sell them. We didn't quite get down the Jay-Z line of selling your own, outfits. We didn't quite go that far. But the guy was really up for stocking the stuff.
Yeah.
So but I could have been I don't know.
You could have been a Ted Baker.
I could have been a Ted Baker. Yeah, but or Mr. Bunda Baker, probably more the case. Yeah. So where do you let's talk. We won't talk Brexit for the moment, but let's just say, what's the lockdown scenario as we're coming in?
Well, I mean, it's been interesting. I mean, at the moment, it's last week was busy. I mean, I've been doing from the start of the lockdown, right at the very beginning, it was almost like a cliff edge. You know, I think most of our customers really put the frighteners on, and it was extremely. It's almost like everything stopped. You know, at the point of the lockdown, and we had probably a good 4 or 5 weeks of it being very, very quiet. Almost like the industry had ground to a halt. But I suppose in a way it had, because you know, there's no live gigs, and that's still the same as far as I know. But of recent, in the last month or two, I've been doing it's been quite busy. I'm quite busy at the moment. You know, I can't really complain. There's orders coming in, and I'm starting to see what looks like people are accepting that things have changed and are not going to change back very quickly, and are starting to concentrate on the fact that they're now focusing on making product to sell online and through websites rather than merchandise at gigs. And that seems to be what's happening. It's and last week was very busy. I mean, the end of last week, I took a lot of orders, and again, predominantly vinyl. Yeah, it's but when you think about it, I mean, vinyl is quite expensive to manufacture, but if you think it costs around about £1,000 to make 300 records, you can sell them for more than a CD. You know, CDs now, people struggle to get more than a 5.4, tenner if you're lucky, but a CD, you know, a vinyl, a nice 12-inch LP is 15, 20 quid, and people are buying them because they want them. You know, it's like I didn't quite get around to saying it, but you know, the difference between the product and how you use it, you listen to it. There's a ceremony involved in playing a cassette or a vinyl record. And you can sit and watch it while you're listening to it. You can look at it going around on the turntable. It's not, and I think people like all that.
Yes, I totally agree with that. Yeah, it's a sort of slightly ritualistic sort of thing of getting the book out the sleeve and then sitting down and reading about the song and all the rest of it. That's, you know, we grew up with that.
I mean, I've got God knows how many records. It's thousands of them, literally.
Yeah. Anyway, Graham, that's been brilliant stuff, and thanks for your time. I mean, I know you're busy.
Pleasure.
But it's good to catch up with you. And
it is,
you know, we haven't, you know, it's been a little while since I've seen you. It's always
you look as you did before, though. So there's not a lot. Not a lot of change.
I look the same. Did you say?
I was going to say, no, you look quite slim and healthy.
Well, you're sort of implying that I wasn't before.
No, not at all. What I should have said was, you've always looked slim and healthy.
Well, you do anyway. You're much more of a fitness.
Yeah. That's become a little bit. My wife tells me that I'm obsessed. But I mean, I think it's like this morning. I literally forgotten about this meeting. That's an age thing. I think that's an age thing. And I'm
for age.
I turn up at the office at about 7 o'clock this morning. Put all my gear on, and I'm out on the bike, and I do 30 kilometres before I start the day. Of course, I got back, and that was when you called me on the phone, and I'm soaking wet because it's not very nice out. Well, it wasn't earlier on. And I'm thinking, God, I've forgotten the meeting. But yeah, I mean, I do. But it is worth it. I've put 25-30k on a bike first thing in the morning, and my day will be better.
Well, I think actually, you know, when you're dealing a lot with whether it's, you know, studio work or whatever, or what you're doing, there's a lot of very intense internal things.
Indeed.
And it's I find that I could never do the studio engineering thing because it would just drive me mad. I'm just not that sort of, I'm not wired up that way. I can't focus for that long. I have to get outside in the fresh air and all the rest of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know how I did it for so long, but yeah, I mean, I think that was part and parcel of the wearing it.
Yeah, it does wear you down.
And when I think about it, even though I wouldn't change anything. They were great. There was some fantastic things that, you know, some great sounds made in that studio, and it was really good. But I don't miss it, in all honesty. I don't miss it.
No.
That was then, and this is now. I know I've said that once
totally.
already in this meeting, but it's and now I need to do what I do in the morning before I start work, and I look forward to twice a week knocking off at 4 o'clock and getting the boat out and going out on the water.
Yeah, good stuff. It's good. Anyway, it's good to see you, and all the best.
Good to you, sir.
And as I say, I've still got a project that's sitting on the back burner, which is not completely finished. But
turn it down a bit; it should burn it.
I did. It's only on a little simmer. It's not gone cold yet.
Yeah.
All right then. So I'll we'll meet soon, hopefully.
Yeah, let's hope so. Yeah, you never know. We might be able to catch up and have a pint in a pub one day.
Hopefully. It's a good excuse for me to come out to the Medway Towns again.
Sounds good. All right then, Vic.
See you soon. It was really good catching up with Graham again, and Graham's work's brilliant. So if you want to check out the stuff that he produces, the details are on the website, or you can just Google Cyclone Music Productions. Well worth communicating with Graham if you need anything done, CDs and albums and stuff like that. It's really good. Okay, so till next time.